Now that I hear that the chattering's kind of all died down, let us begin in a word of prayer. Lord, we ask today that this study will be done in a way that pleases you, that as we get to know this word better, we get to know you better. We ask this on your name. Amen. All right. I want to know, who's actually done a personal Bible study on the Book of Kings? Who's done a Bible study, whether personal or part of a group, on the Book of Kings? I count 4 people. Neat. Okay, I got to do my own thing. So some contextual things before we start. This is the end of David, the start of Solomon. And this is David quite literally on his deathbed. So we're starting right at the beginning of Solomon. I don't think there's anything else I need to do. Let me explain this. Everything in black is what we're reading. So you have the sections that we'll be dividing this up into, and everything in blue is what I thought was an interesting or important note to mention. So if you see something on here that I just completely glossed by, yell it at me that I forgot it. Can I get a volunteer to read 1 Kings 1, verses 1 through 4? Whenever you're ready.
Now King David was old and advanced in years, and although they covered him with clothes, he could not get warm. Therefore his servants said to him, "Let a young woman be sought for my lord the king. Let her wait on the king and be in his service. Let her lie in your arms, that my lord the king may be warm." So they sought for a beautiful young woman throughout all the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The young woman was very beautiful. She was of service to the king and attended to him, but the king knew her not.
All right, so some things to note. In verse 2, it mentions a young woman. Most likely, she was a virgin, but that didn't have to do with sexual purity. It more had to do with she didn't have any ties. She functions as his hospice caretaker because he is dying. He's got body problems and all that. So it's more, let's find us someone who doesn't have any connections. And why I think all that is important is because verse 4. If someone pulls up the NIV, it's going to be a very different translation, but it gets at what the text is saying rather than what the words said. So he knew her not is a, how do I say it right? I'll just say it bluntly. He didn't have sex. They did not have sex. It's because the Hebrew word yada, I remember it as Yoda. Yoda knew everything, so yada is to know. Little tricks to pass Greek. Not Greek, Hebrew. Yada is to know. There is no word for sex in Hebrew. They had different ways of saying it. They didn't sleep together. They didn't lie down. They didn't know each other. Those are the 3 ways that they say they had sex. To know, yada, is the God-pleasing form of sex. And in this case, it's saying they didn't even do the deed at all, which is important to note for much later on in chapter 2. All right. Any questions you have about this oh-so-long portion? Okay. Then can I get a volunteer for verses 5 through 10? All right. Absalom was, I would dare say, David's favorite son, but Absalom's also like one of the worst sons of David. Led to all the problems, but David tried really hard not to kill him. So it's important to note that Adonijah, I hope I'm saying that one right, Adonijah was next in line in birth order to be king. And that's really important because it goes through the whole lineage. However, as we'll find out, he wasn't the one promised the crown. So he tried taking it for himself. That's why he got a crap ton of sheep, I think it was 50 cattle, and a bunch of men to go, hey, look at me, I'm king. Oh yeah, serpent stone. Okay. Old Jerusalem, especially during David and Solomon's time, is itty bitty witty. Old Covina, which was a square mile, was probably bigger than Jerusalem was at that time. So like it's a tiny place. And the serpent stone, which is by En Rogel, is a river that flows through, though river is a nice strong word. It was more like a bustling creek. And then Serpent Stone was right next to it. It would be like going to Kirby Park. It's not that far. And that was kind of the whole point of it. Everything at this point was within walking distance, so it was a much more smaller place. So everyone knew where Serpent Stone was. It'd be like saying, oh yeah, you're going to go off Barranca and you're going to stop at Badia. Everyone knows where that is, and I didn't even point to which direction it is right, I think. Is there anything else I needed to know? Oh yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he not invite Nathan? I know.
That's the part I was just going to get to. He didn't invite Nathan. He didn't invite Zadok. He didn't invite Benaniah. And he didn't invite David's mighty men. That's important to note. Basically, he picked everyone who wouldn't cause a problem, and everyone who would, he didn't invite. Which that's really important to note because that way he can become king without a problem. No one's going to go, you shouldn't be king, it was promised to someone else. Which means that for his whole ceremony and succession, no one was there to fight it. However, the best laid plans are often flawed, and that's where we get to the next part. Going from verse 11 to 27. Can I get a volunteer for that?
Nathan said to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Now wherefore come, furnish me with lights, that you may save your own life, and the life of your son Solomon. Go in at once to King David, and say to him, did you not, my lord the king, swear to your servant, saying, Solomon, your son shall reign after
What I love is Samuel starts going on the offensive. Instead of going, oh, the king's going to come in and now we have to fight, he goes, oh, he did that thing? Cool. Hey, David, who was supposed to be your king? Make him king. But he doesn't do this going in as himself. Not Samuel, Nathan, my bad. Nathan, instead he has Bathsheba remind David, and then Nathan comes in going, yeah, so about what she just said, isn't it true? So that's a little fun thing. I can imagine him being all big robed like, I'm the prophet, you should do this, don't you forget. The next thing is that the promise he makes comes from 1 Chronicles 22, verse 9. If I remember, it's not as clearly written, but that's where it does come from. So this is an old promise. This isn't just something he made like last week. So I think that's important to note with that. Joab. Joab's one of the no-no guys. David made a promise not to kill him, but there was no promise made about him not being killed. And I think that's important to note because we're about to get to the part where he does an oopsie-whoopsie. Next is going to be, that part's way too long. I'm just going to tell you what happens in the next part. So the next part's going to be David makes Solomon king. And it's great. He's on his deathbed. He goes, Solomon, you will be my king. Oh, by the way, I've got like this hit list of people I need you to take out. So the promise is reiterated from David's side about the promise made in 1 Chronicles 22. And then Solomon goes to the Gihon, which again is another river in Old Jerusalem. And it would be like saying, go down to Badia and Citrus. You know where that is. Everyone knew where it was. And he got washed there and became king. Now here's the fun part that I actually do want someone to read. I just got to remember where it starts. Okay, can someone read from 41 to the end of the chapter? Thank you.
41, you said, right?
Yep.
Adoniah and all the guests who were with him heard as they finished feasting. And when Joab heard the sound of the trumpet, he said, what does this uproar in the city mean? While he was still speaking, behold, Jonathan, the son of Abiathar, the priest came. And Adoniah said, come in, for you are a worthy man, and bring good news. Jonathan answered Adoniah, no, for our Lord King David has made Solomon king, and the king has set with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Sherethites, and the Pelethites. And they had him ride on the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon, and they have gone up from their rejoicing, so that the city is in an uproar. This is the noise that you have heard. Solomon sits on the royal throne. Moreover, the king's servants came to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, May your God make the name of Solomon more famous than yours, and make his throne greater than your throne. And the king bowed himself on the bed. And the king also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has granted someone to sit on my throne this day, my own eyes seeing. Then all the guests of Adoniah trembled and rose, and each went his own way. And Adoniah feared Solomon, so he arose and went and took hold of the horns of the altar. Then it was told Solomon, Behold, Adoniah fears King Solomon, for behold, he has laid hold of the thorns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon's work to me first, that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. And Solomon said, If he will show himself a worthy man, not one of his hairs shall fall to the earth. But if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar. And he came and paid homage to King Solomon, and Solomon said to him, Go to your house.
I think it's important to note that David is still alive when Solomon becomes king. So a lot of successions would happen after someone dies, but not here. And David, being on hospice, bows to Solomon, showing that he's given up his kingly privileges and has made Solomon king, not just in name, but actually in power. I love the little thing of, if he's worthy, not a hair is going to be hurt. Yeah, you're going to find out he's not worthy real quick. So he was trembling before because of Solomon. And it's important to note that when he goes and puts his hands on the altar, it's like requesting asylum or sanctuary. He is doing the, you can't hurt me, I'm following the rules, help me. If I remember right, that doesn't happen until, oh no, it does here. So Solomon goes, if he's worthy, I ain't going to hurt him. And this was the whole way of doing sanctuary, the way that they had been told to do it. So he's playing the rule book. And I think that's really interesting because Solomon does the same thing in return. Is there anything else of importance? Any questions on this? Because this one felt like a lot.
When it talks about Jonathan in verse 42, is that the same Jonathan?
No, he's dead.
Okay.
So this is someone that was named in honor because it was the son's king. The king's son. So it would be an honor to name your son after the king's son, especially if he was dead.
I always found it fascinating, the group of people that he excluded. They were all people with devotion to the Lord.
Yeah.
Nathan was clearly a prophet,
Oh, yeah.
and the other folks were devoted to the Lord as well. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
He excluded that group.
They were all devoted to the Lord greatly. I mean, even Nathan went to David, risking death, to tell him that what you're doing with Bathsheba is wrong. And instead of David getting angry like Saul would have, he instead repents. And that's one of the big things that separates Saul from David is Saul was always after the throne. David was always after God. Yeah.
Suspect too, like Job.
Yeah.
Joab had been a murderer, and David called curse on him.
Yeah. Which I can't remember if that is directly referenced or if I read it trying to understand what's going on. But I know that David made a promise not to kill Joab, but he didn't promise that Joab wouldn't be killed. It's semantics, but it's important. Because how Solomon does, the oath that Solomon says is a very common oath that you'll find in the rest of the Old Testament. And it's very keenly going, this will happen, and God will smite me if it doesn't. Okay. So after we have the go murder everyone, I believe, oh wait, no, hold up. I think I jumped a gun. I think this is when David says go kill everyone. From chapter 2, verses 1 through 9, can I get a volunteer?
When David's time to die drew near, he commanded some of his sons, saying, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning you, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. Moreover, you also know that Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, how he dealt with the two commanders of the armies of Israel, Abner the son of Ner and Amasa the son of Jether, whom he killed, avenging in time of peace for blood that has been shed in war, and putting the blood of war on the belt around his waist and on the sandals of his feet. Act therefore according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to Sheol in peace, but deal loyally with the sons of the Zalari, the Gileadite,
Just try your best with the names. I struggle.
at your table, for which such loyalty they met with me, I fled from Absalom, your brother. And there is also with you Shimei, the son of Ger, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who cursed me with grievous curse on the day when I went to Mahanaim. But when he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, saying, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now wherefore do not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man. You will know what you ought to do to him, and you shall bring his gray head down with blood to Sheol.
That's where it was. I remember I read it somewhere. That's David going, I promise not to kill them. However, we all know they're guilty. So when you're king, because it's not me, kill them. And that's what happens. We will see Joab dying soon, and then we will see Shimei, I don't know. It's Hebrew. We'll see him die afterwards. I do love that David goes, bless you that everything you do is glorious and God-pleasing. Hi, I have 2 people. Please kill them. Great way to go die. Someone read 10 through 12. I know it's a real long thing.
Then David slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. And the time that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of David his father, and his kingdom was firmly established.
Remember that David moved the capital from Hebron to Jerusalem and made Jerusalem the solid place because it was really, really easy to defend. And then it's important to note that Solomon sits on the throne his father established. This is like hey, I've got the credentials. I'm the one doing this rightly. I'm not doing it wrong. It's kind of more I'm showing you I'm a legal citizen. You can't kick me out. The next part is going to be really, really long. So I'm going to tell you the fun things that happen. And if we have time, I might have some people read some stuff. So in this part, this is where Solomon goes and starts killing the people, but he doesn't do it as a thief in the night. He doesn't just send an assassin and go kill him. He goes through the legal loopholes and has the murdering done the right way. So
It's interesting you would say murdering.
there's like 50,000 ways they have words for kill in Hebrew. So you could pick one and it's probably the right word. So first we have on the chopping block is Adoniah. So Adoniah, in his infinite wisdom, after he asked for asylum, goes up to Solomon's mom, Bathsheba, and goes, hey, David's hospice worker is kind of cute. Give her to me in marriage. And Solomon, being the wise king, thank God he's wise before God blesses him, goes, yeah, no, that's wrong. So Adoniah is then killed for being really creepy. The next one is Joab. And can I get someone to read, making sure I say the right parts? I think it's 28 to 35. Yeah, starting at verse 28, going through 35.
When the news came to Joab, for Joab had supported Adoniah, although he had not supported Absalom, Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and caught hold of the horns of the altar. And when it was told King Solomon, Joab has fled to the tent of the Lord, and behold, he is beside the altar, Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, saying, go strike him down. So Benaiah came to the tent of the Lord and said to him, the king commands, come out. But he said, no, I will die here. Then Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, thus said Joab, and thus he answered me. The king replied to him, do as he has said, strike him down and bury him, and thus take away from me and from my father's house the guilt for the blood that Joab shed without cause. The Lord will bring back his bloody deeds on his own head, because without the knowledge of my father David, he attacked and killed with a sword 2 men more righteous and better than himself, Abner the son of Ner, commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa the son of Jether, commander of the army of Judah. So shall their blood come back on the head of Joab and on the head of his descendants forever. But for David and for his descendants and for his house and for his throne, there shall be peace from the Lord forevermore. Then Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up and struck him down and put him to death, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. The king put Benaiah the son of Jehoiada over the army in place of Joab, and the king put Zadok the priest in place of Abiathar.
That part is important to note. So remember that Adoniah went to the temple and put his hands on the altar going, hey, give me sanctuary. That's exactly what Joab does. But note the difference in wording. When Joab was, kill me if I'm unworthy, Agai, When Agai put his hands on the altar, he went, "Kill me if I'm unworthy." Joab went, "I'm going to die here." So Solomon, fulfilling his quest, kills him. And it's the next interesting thing, because there's a lot of interesting things in this. The blame goes from the house of David, because they were the ruling family, to the guilty party. The blame I like is that it's shifted over kind of like a scapegoat. But in this case, it's not the guilt improperly being placed, it's being put on the correct family. You'll have to forgive me, I didn't do a deep research. I don't know if we hear about Joab's family again, but it's interesting how it doesn't mention anyone else. It's just Joab is the guilty party and Joab is dead. As we go through, the next part's going to be Shimei? I don't know. However you pronounce it right is how you say it. It's good enough. Can I get someone to read, I think it's, 36 to 38. Because this is an important part, and I'll summarize the rest of the chapter. Someone who hasn't read, can I get a volunteer? Thank you.
Then the king sent and summoned Shimei and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and dwell there, and do not go out from there to any place whatever. For on the day you go out and cross the brook Kidron, know for certain that you shall die. Your blood, your blood shall be on your own head." And Shimei said to the king, What you say is good, as my lord and king, and said, so will your servant do. So Shimei lived in Jerusalem many days.
Many days, not many years.
Yeah, many days.
So we have the final oath made in this chapter, which is, you've done wrong. Hey, move to Jerusalem or you're dead. That sounds like a good plan. I'm not dead. I get to be in the capital. You know what? That's okay. I'll do it. And that's exactly what Shimei does. However, he doesn't follow the command. You know, when there's a death threat over your head, my first thought would be, that would probably be the one thing I'm always thinking about. Shimei doesn't do that. In the next part, I'm just going to tell you what happens because it's a lot more fun if I tell you action-packed. 3 years go by. Okay, so 3 years have gone. He's getting used to life in Jerusalem. He goes to his favorite big old place every morning. It's great. And then his 2 slaves run away. And this was a common thing that would happen at the time because unfair treatment and who whatnot. And in his infinite wisdom, he goes, I'm going to leave. And he does. He gets his servants and comes back. However, he's kind of gone for a lot more than just one day. And who do you think hears about it but then King Solomon himself? And you know that little itty-bitty promise of stay in the city? He broke. Sorry, you broke the promise. I have to kill you. Oh no. Which thus fulfills all 3 of the people who needed to die according to David. Which I think is a great way to start off your kingship, don't you think? 3 political enemies, just knock them all off one by one. This is... It's a gruesome story. It's great that Solomon becomes king, but I think it's a great reminder of hubris. All these people thought they were more important than people who God had chosen to be in power. And each of them paid the ultimate price by dying not from God, but from fellow men that they hurt and abused. Adoniah thought he could be king and instead was killed by the king. Joab thought he was smarter than the king and instead got killed by the king. And Shimei thought he knew better than the king and, of course, died by the king. And while maybe we're not living under a king, it's a good reminder that the institutions God has put in us to be over us are maybe things we should listen to. You know, God established it, so maybe it's going to be right. After we go through that oh so uneventful 2 chapters, what are some thoughts that you guys have? Glad you didn't hang with the king. Yeah, I'd be terrified to find out what Saul was like if Solomon, the wise one, was this. I wouldn't say kill happy, but so willing to kill.
But then again, he was basically just fulfilling the requests or the demands of his father. Right?
Yeah.
He said, David said, well, David didn't kill them, right? Especially Joab. He said, I
Yeah.
promise I'm going to kill you. But like you said, that's not a promise that you won't be killed.
Yeah.
So in some way, I guess, in terms of being the head of state, the king, right, you're fulfilling what you promised you would do, what is maybe required of you as it passed down from father to son or king to king.
Yeah. They were fulfilling their kingly duties.
Yeah, in our day, that would probably not go over well, but
Yeah. But here, with God being seen as a cloud, is still in, I would say it's still in living memory, because these words were passed on mostly orally. Yeah, sure, some of this was written, but it wasn't written and then forgotten. It was written and then you kept telling your kids the stories. So great grandpa Otto whatever saw God as a cloud. And I'm telling you now. And yeah. So fulfilling all these things is really important, and it's interesting how they all keep their word and they all play it by the book. They're not going over and above what they should be doing. Solomon made an oath. Don't leave, you won't die. He breaks the oath. The other guy goes, I will die in this temple. Okay, I'm fulfilling your request. And if he is unworthy, he won't be killed. Well, he very much was not worthy, so he was killed. What other thoughts we have?
So I have the NIV.
Yeah.
Bible. So the Adonijah guy that asked for the lady,
Yeah.
one of David's former lady friends, I guess.
David's hospice worker.
Her. And I was like, oh, so Solomon's just like a feminist. Like, no, you can't have her, but not really. It was like, my Bible says, as like a side note, is that taking the former king's lady would put you in a position of power, and that's why Solomon denied him and then killed him. Is that like an accurate thing? I don't know. That's what mine says. Like,
Yeah.
Solomon had a harsh response to Adonijah's request to marry King David's companion. Asking for her may have been Adonijah's veiled attempt to regain the throne lost to Solomon. In the ancient Middle East, a person who married any of the late king's wives or concubines publicly claimed the rights of the former king. Adonijah may have been cunningly hatching another conspiracy. Solomon at least seemed to think so.
I wouldn't doubt. I mean, if she was there during most of the meetings, then he would know the inner workings of the kingdom, which would give him a lot of power on how to do things. So,
Were they allowed to be there?
with David dying, I don't think there was a choice, because Israel's not a cold place. And if David was feeling cold and someone had to be there taking care of him, I think she would have to be there for most of it. That is me putting on my modern day opinions and reflections onto a text that is probably like 3,000 years old. So take my beautiful advice with a grain of salt. But I would think she would have to be there, and I see it two ways. One, she was given in marriage, but nothing happened, because it literally says nothing happened. So it could be that it very much was a wife. The role she played was a hospice caretaker, and granted, hospice caretakers weren't really a job yet. So,
but she was,
Yeah, no, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
He was like, trying to like a workaround.
Yeah.
To get back into a power position.
Oh.
Asking for this girl. I just like, oh, cool, Solomon, don't give away a woman like
Yeah.
job. But then also maybe it was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to give you a position of power.
yeah. I could see Adoniah trying to snake his way back into the, yeah, taking whatever means possible.
But how come one of his wives wasn't the hospice worker? Like, how come Bathsheba was she just, was above her? Or, I mean,
Yeah, that's an excellent question. One of the thoughts I had is maybe she was helping run the kingdom by that point, which is why she didn't. I mean, David had like 8 or so wives, so there was a lot of women there. But I think it was all of them had kids, so they would all be thinking, "Oh, let me take care of my kid and then my dying husband." So the whole point of getting, I forget what her name is, Abishag. Was here's someone with literally no commitments. Let's have her take care of the dying king. That's how I understand that to be. So, again, take that with a grain of salt. 3,000 years later, opinions. Yeah. Which I think is why they specifically went for a marryable woman. Because the word that they used isn't virgin. There's a different word for that. They chose a young woman who is able to be married. Let's find her and have her take care of the king.
Do we ever hear about her anymore in the Bible? The hospice worker?
I will have to look it up. My gut's going to say no, knowing what happens with how many names are dropped and then just kind of never heard of again. I doubt we are going to hear about her again, but I can look that up for next week. Let me make a note of that. Okay. Are there any more comments or questions on what's said? Otherwise, I'm going to talk about how we're going to break up the rest of Kings. Okay. Kings kind of falls into 8 different sections. You have the first 2 chapters, which are David's succession, which is Solomon coming into power. The next you have is Solomon starting to reign. That's going to be chapters 3 through 11. Then in chapters 12 and 13, there's political and religious schisms. That's where you have the 2 kingdoms fall apart. 12 and 13. In 14 through 16, it's the 2 kingdoms and their kind of whole history until Elijah, the prophet, comes about. Then in 1 Kings 17 to 2 Kings 1, we have Elijah doing all his fun prophetic stuff. Then we have Elijah goes up for 2 Kings 1. In 2 Kings 2 through 13, we have Elisha doing his whole prophetic thing. And then we have the 2 kingdoms going to the fall of Samaria. That'll be chapters 14 through 17. Then 18 through 25, a few days, is going to be the last years of the kingdom of Judah. And in that one, I might try and sprinkle in some things from Isaiah because, what is it? It's at least the first half of Isaiah, probably a little bit more, is we actually get interactions from Isaiah to the king going, hey, you shouldn't do this. My Old Testament prophet's going to be mad at me. I don't remember what chapter it is. But there's literally a part in Isaiah where the king is showing off all of his goods to Assyria, going, hey, look at how rich we are. And Isaiah goes, you're an idiot. You shouldn't do that. And he goes, we didn't fall. It all worked out. And Isaiah goes, yeah, but because you did all that, we're going to fall in about 30 years. Because his line is, it didn't fall under me, so everything's okay. Talk about hubris. Next week, we are going to have a presentation from, forgive me, I forget the name. Maria. She is going to be talking about her journey through, I'm going to have you describe it.
Basically, most everyone at St. John knows that Maria was for 9 months with YWAM, Youth with a Mission, and her first section, 3 months, was leadership training. She then had a group of students under her, and then 3 months of outreach. Since she kept several members of this congregation up to date on her journeys and everything, she wants to kind of give you a debrief, if you will. She wants to give you kind of a little presentation of what she did, what happened, and yeah. So she's planning to do that next week.
Yeah, so presentation on YWAM.
Yeah.
It was 3 months of tutoring, well, mentoring.
Her first 3 months was leadership training. So
Oh,
she was a leader,
leadership
but not
training.
a group leader. And
Then
then
it was-
the students came in January
Okay.
through March. and
January through
in which
March.
She was. She had people that she was a one-on-one
Mentor?
mentor.
Okay.
And then
3 months of mentorship and then
and
3
that
months
that
of
was,
outreach.
What they call discipleship training school for the students.
Okay.
DTS they call it, and then 3 months of an outreach, which was the second half of the DTS.
Okay.
Where they actually went to Turkey first, then to Germany, and then England.
Turkey, Germany, and England. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. She had really good food.
Yeah, yeah, she did, yeah.
And then next week, you will be presenting, Kevin, on what was the PSD convention, right?
Pacific Southwest District Convention. I'm not, it's not going to be very long. I think, as you all know, I was the delegate for the congregation to the Pacific Southwest District Convention. That was the end of June. And I just kind of wanted to give you kind of an idea what was going on there and how things turned out. So that will be the first Sunday in August. And again, it won't be too long.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot to say, except I just wanted to give the congregation kind of a debrief on what happened there. I think I owe you that.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
And after both of those, we'll still have the regular Bible study. That'll be going through Solomon's reign as king. So, I don't know, read chapters 3 through 8 for next week. So that way we can get through this really long book. I'm really hoping they have my favorite story, which is Solomon cutting up the baby. Well, sorry, saying he will cut up the baby to find the real mom. I'm really hoping that's in the next few chapters. I don't know. I haven't read them yet.
Solomon's really bloodthirsty.
Yeah, talk about Solomon being willing to kill. Okay. What time should I have ended? Because this is all I prep for, and I feel like I'm like half an hour early.
Yeah, normally it would go till 11:30.
Oh, whoopsies. Okay.
You're just getting your feet wet.
Yeah. Yeah, I started at 10:15, which is, I think, what it says on the website for when we should start. So I was just trusting my gut. I should have asked.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, I think Sunday school ends at 11:15, right, Carrie? Carrie, 11:15 is Sunday school.
Or 11:30, depending.
We were always told it was 11:15, but then Bible study started going till 11:30, so Sunday school, it was just,
It's a give and take. Like everything in church work, it's a give and take. Well, you know what? Since I have half an hour, I'm going to flip it over to you guys. What was something memorable from this study for you?
when we were reading it, I was thinking like, okay, it's good information, I didn't know a lot of this, but like, what does it really mean for today? But then you brought that in a little bit about like, there are institutions in place and there are laws and rules to follow. So I like how, even though this is like really old and historical and it's very interesting, but I like that part of it, like kind of bringing it and making it applicable to like, what does this mean for us today though? So I like how you did that, and I'd be interested in seeing how you continue to do that as we keep reading.
Okay, yeah, I'll try and keep it relevant. Yeah. You know,
Oh my gosh, no. I speak for myself.
I saw a hand back there.
Another example of our time is not God's time. So we have these things that were going to be happening, when, if we're looking for, say, judgment or vengeance, we want to have it immediately. But, God had his plan and things got carried out, according to his time.
Yeah. God has a great plan, and while we want things now or next week, he might have things planned for like 5 years from now before it actually happens.
I felt like David was unfair to his son. I mean, he asked him to do
decided just, okay, after I die, you can go and get rid of that man. I don't know what that means, because in the Psalms, it's always said like forgiveness and God is their revenge. And now he asked his son to take revenge and get rid of a man whom he knew did bad, and he should have stood, against that man, but for his own benefit. Because he was the guy in charge of the army, maybe he was afraid of him. He didn't do that. So to me, it's kind of troublesome that he's he's giving me David contradictory, stories about himself.
Yeah.
I can't put him in the picture where he's the same guy who was with the Psalms, and then the guy doing this.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go together. In my head, there's a contradiction.
Yeah. David and Moses, to me, are the most interesting things about the Old Testament, because they are seen as these pillars, these great men. And then you read any story about them, and they are just not great people. When I think of a God-pleasing dude, Moses is not the first one I think of. I mean, his call to be the leader of Israel was, I got a bad stutter, I can't do it. Like, I'm sorry, what? God is literally talking to you, and you go, no, I can't do it, I don't speak well. Like, I'm sorry, that's not what this is all about. And then you have David, who, let's not forget about the most famous thing, Bathsheba, literally has a man killed abusing his power. Yet he's also held up as one of the best kings of Israel. And I think one of the big things to focus on them is, yeah, they were not good people. They were human, which is very reassuring, because I can read myself in David's shoes. I would have probably done a lot of the same things he did, probably would have done a lot of worse, because I'm human. But it makes them show us that the walk with God isn't just for the perfect, it's for everyone. And while I don't like someone giving a hit list on their deathbed, it does make him very human. And I think when we think of David the psalm writer versus David the king, we often forget that David was a man. And while a lot of the king things that we see are very bad, like him running away from his son for years, when he could have just had him killed because he was quite literally breaking God's law, it's important to remember that I probably would have done the same thing were I in his shoes. And it's this nice rehumilitizing of the Bible that I think is important to note, because God's whole thing is he takes the top and puts them on bottom, and the bottom he puts on top. And it's this great reordering that we all see. David was a shepherd. Shepherds were seen below low, because they were always dirty. They were always with their sheep. And what eventually became a shepherds was they were anyone who would fall under ADA now and get the actual help they need, they just became shepherds, because it was a way to not deal with them. So it's interesting that he chooses a shepherd to be king. And David's not a good man, but he's also a man. And the big thing is he's going after God's heart rather than following his deeds. So I agree with you. I don't like what David did to Solomon, but it's important to keep in mind that this is an example for how we are to live our lives as Christians. Well, in this case, at this time, how to live their lives as Israelites, and now for us, how to live as Christians.
I think it sounds exactly like a family business, honestly. Burying somebody that's involved in a family business, like eventually the person who's in charge has to pass it on. And they might have things that are unfinished, and they don't want to let it go, so then you're giving that job to somebody else to do, even if it sucks that it's your kid to handle your business, but that's kind of how it goes, too.
Yeah, nothing in life is clean. Anything else? Because I'm having fun. I get to let out my Bible nerd, so it's exciting.
I always think of all these Old Testament stories, all the things that go on behind the scenes, it's kind of like me trying to control things too on earth, but like Nathan telling Bathsheba, you need to go do this. And it's kind of like, was it Rebecca, telling Jacob, put this stuff on your arms. So
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to control. God is still in charge, but all these the stories in the Old Testament,
Yeah.
people trying to control everything. That's kind of like us here on earth too. But we forget God's got in charge, but we're going to do this to make sure it happens.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about the Old Testament is it's not clean. The whole thing is full of messy stories. Here, put on this sheep wool so your dad, who's blind, thinks you're your older brother. oh yeah, you worked for 7 years for one of my daughters, here's the other. Like, these are not clean stories, but again, I like them because they remind me that everyone's human. These are people who we hold up. Israel, Jacob, was a deceiver. Yet he's literally the name of the nation. Everyone heralds him. Judah, who let his brothers kill his youngest brother, is where Jesus comes from. That is the family house he is from. And I love just how messy it is, but it reminds me that they're humans, and even I can do this walk. And I am not a nice, clean, strong human. I am messy and dirty just like everyone else.
It also shows that God uses the imperfect, sinful humans to accomplish his will. David is one, Moses is another, and you can, pick any one of them and see how God has fulfilled his will in the works, in the lives of imperfect, sinful human beings. So, you look at Moses, and he really didn't want the job. God finally got angry with him, and he reluctantly takes the job, and then what happens? He's almost transformed, right? He performs these miracles of the plagues in Egypt. Finally, they're released, and they go 40 years in the desert, and finally, leads them to the promised land. Doesn't go in, but Joshua takes them in. And then you look at the life of Joshua, and God tells him, go in there and slaughter them all. Right?
Yeah.
So you look at how Solomon takes these, completes the hits that David told him to do, but God tells him, I don't want one of them left. Kind of
Yeah.
thing. And of course they didn't do that either, right? But it's just when we look at how God works through people, and even the things that God does through people find fault with that and all kinds of stuff. But I mean, if we really keep our faith, our hope, our trust that what God is doing is the right thing, it comes out right.
Yeah. Keep our focus on God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you spoke of Judah.
I say for each of these, what we might call superheroes, when they had the success, is when they relied on God for their strength.
Yeah.
Not when they were doing it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of not doing hubris, relying on God, I think is one of the hardest things we can do because it's removing the power from our hands. But these superheroes of the Bible, it's when they focused on God. Look at Esther. She relied on God to help her, not, I know what I'm going to say, I'm going to do this. Or when Jonah eventually stopped focusing on his thing and focused on God, he gets spit out of the whale. He goes to Nineveh, and his words, which are God's words, are not only heard, but also followed. And it's this whole thing of rely on God, not rely on yourself. Going in the way of Adoniah, don't have hubris and think you can take it for yourself. Okay. It's 11:15, so I'm going to end us here. Let's end with a word of prayer, because I like beginning and ending with prayers. Dear Lord, we thank you that you gave us this time to study you, and we thank you for the worship that we were able to have this morning. We ask that you continue to remind us throughout the week that you are God, that you do have a plan, and that it is being fulfilled. We ask that you guide us in ways that please you and that help fulfill your plan. We ask this on your name. Amen.